Welcome, everyone. This is Melanie, your AI-generated host. Today on AMC, creator William Ford sits down with one of the brightest rising stars in symphony orchestra management, Emily Fritz-Endres. Recently appointed as the executive director of the Albany Symphony Orchestra in New York, Emily's journey is as impressive as it is inspiring. With an MBA from Columbia Business School and a BA from Carleton College, Emily's impact on the orchestral world began with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, where she served as Director of Board Administration, nurturing relationships with 250 trustees and advisors, leading the grand opening of the Linda Center for Music and Learning at Tanglewood, and spearheading two major fundraising campaigns. Emily moved on to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. There, she expertly guided financial and facilities planning, forged deep connections with Atlanta's diverse communities, and led audience development initiatives, venue solutions, and an endowment campaign. That's where Emily and William met. Her vibrant leadership and passion have fueled her journey straight to the top. When she's not revolutionizing the orchestra world, Emily loves playing the clarinet, getting lost in nature, and mentoring queer youth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you'd like to support AMC, head over to patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic. Without further ado, here's William.
Hello there.
Good morning. Hello. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How's Atlanta?
Actually, today it's quite lovely. It's not too hot, not too humid. It's kind of one of those one day in the fall and one day in the spring you get in Atlanta where the weather's okay. I know people love the hot weather. I do not particularly, but anyway, it is a nice day. How about where you are? Are you in Albany?
I am. I'm in downtown Albany, and I have to say the biggest change for me moving from Atlanta to the capital region of New York has been I get my falls back and I'm going to get my winter back. I was not built for the Atlanta summers.
I agree with that. Being from the Northeast myself, I get that. What I like to do is talk a bit about you and your background, because I think it's helpful for my viewers to get an understanding of how you got to be where you are today and what kind of events, people, whatever, lent to that kind of success. And then the second thing is we'll talk about the Albany Symphony and your position to the extent that you can, realizing that you're still fairly new. But I'm sure you already have your take on things, and so we can talk a little bit about that. So where were you born?
I consider both Massachusetts and Minnesota my home states. That's where I spent most of my time growing up, but I went to middle and high school in Massachusetts, and that's where I fell in love with music by way of the clarinet. I was in a Massachusetts public school, and they did have a music program where you went and tried all the instruments, and clarinet was the one that spoke to me. And so I picked it up, and kind of there's been no turning back.
You grew up in Massachusetts and Minnesota. How much time in each?
Well, Massachusetts is where I did most of my schooling. My dad's family is from Minnesota, and then I did college in Minnesota.
When you went to college, you were in political sciences, I recollect.
That's right. Yes, I went to Carleton College, which is about 90 minutes south of the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And it's a liberal arts college in a really gorgeous little town that's known for the town of cows, colleges, and contentment, because St. Olaf College is there as well. And I did continue playing the clarinet while I was there, but it became clear to me through my teachers who helped me realize that while I had some talent with clarinet, it was going to be a lot of solitary practice time in a practice room if I wanted to make a career of it. And so I continued to nurture my clarinet playing and my love of music as a non-professional player. And that really unlocked a whole bunch of other potential for me in terms of studying political science, international relations, and my overall liberal arts degree there that helped me discover arts administration as being something that I was good at.
What about your parents?
Hmm.
Are
Yes.
they arts oriented?
Well, it was my through my mom's side of the family, had a gift from an aunt who passed away, great aunt who gave us piano lessons. And so that's kind of where we found our first love of music, was having a piano in the house, my two sisters and me. And but both my parents really cultivated my love of music and are just incredible supports. They even came to my opening night here in at the Albany Symphony just a week ago.
Did they play musical instruments themselves or sing or something like that?
Uh, yeah, not really. My mom does play the piano, and my dad, played the organ a little bit and sang a little bit. But no, it was mostly just the love of it, not a professional connection to music.
After college, you got an MBA. Was that like a general MBA program or did you have some kind of specialization?
So I actually got my MBA a little bit after college. So after college, I moved back from Minnesota to Boston, and I got a job at Suffolk University, which is a school in downtown Boston. And I worked there in the provost office. I was the Student Success Division Coordinator. Say that three times fast, but it was really an amalgam of a lot of different departments to support students by way of career services, academic advising, international student support, study abroad. That was a really great opportunity for me to work with who was then the vice provost of the university, Sebastian Royo. And he really helped guide me of what it meant to work at a nonprofit and to work at a large nonprofit like an academic university. And so I just learned an enormous amount from him and really cemented my desire to be an nonprofit administrator. And then from there, I got a job at the Boston Symphony. I started as an assistant to the director of development and then worked my way to various different departments at the Boston Symphony, focused mostly on governance and fundraising, although I got to do a little bit of everything in terms of seeing the organization. And then during the pandemic, when that instituted a hiatus of performance for us in 2020, I decided to use that time because I had a little bit less time devoted to concerts and more time to devote to studies. And so I got my MBA at Columbia University, and it's a executive MBA designed for people who are working full time and are maybe a little bit further into their careers, who really want to make sure that they are up leveling their work and being able to institute some best practices and some rigor that you can get only from an MBA into practices. And so during the pandemic, every other week I traveled from Boston to New York City for classes because we were able to safely do it in person. And it was a general MBA. It was really important to me not for it to be arts administration focused, but for it to be focused on best practices that cut across all different industries, and that also I wanted to interact with professors and students from different industries so that we could have that kind of ebb and flow of exchange between my nonprofit background and my orchestra experience and their experience in other industries.
Boston Symphony has either the biggest or second biggest budget of symphony orchestras in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you were involved in getting money for the symphony?
When I finished my 8 years there, my final title was Director of Board Administration. And so I was in charge of the relationships for the Board of Trustees and the Board of Advisors. This is a group, when all total, is about 250 people who are financially and from a volunteer and expertise perspective invested in the Boston Symphony. And so I was responsible for making sure that they were engaged, that their expertise and their networks were fully engaged by the symphony, and that they also were doing fiduciary level and advice level responsibility for the organization by way of their committee structures and their interaction with the CEO and their senior management team. And then I also assisted with fundraising as well from that group.
Does the Boston Symphony fall like other symphony orchestras where about 25% comes from ticket sales, or roughly thereabout, certainly not a majority? What's the relative relationship between small donors and large donors?
In Boston, and like you say, it's actually, I think they're technically the second largest orchestra in America. LA Philharmonic,
It's the
I think,
first, yeah.
has them beat. Yes, yeah, exactly, just by a little bit. And what's similar about LA and Boston is that they are what's called 52-week orchestras. Their orchestras are salaried for the entirety of the year, and that they do programming for the entirety of the year. And that includes summer programming. So the Boston Symphony has a summer home called Tanglewood, which is in Western Massachusetts in the Berkshires, and a place, a part of the world I really love. And so there's a lot of engaged from ticket buyers and donors, supporters that come from all the different types of brands of what the Boston Symphony does, including Tanglewood, and a huge swath of people who only support the Boston Symphony because of the programming and engagement that they do over the summer at Tanglewood. And so the revenue mix actually in Boston is really interesting. It is almost 50% comes from ticket sales.
Really?
When I was there, it's about a $100 million operating budget, and so about 50 million of that comes from ticket sales, and that is split almost a third between the Boston Symphony subscription season, their core programming, the Boston Pops, and the big holiday pops that they do in July, and then other pops programming that happens throughout the year, including that Tanglewood, and then finally Tanglewood is that final piece of the pie. And so when you think about the donor pyramid the other side of that, so that's 50% ticket revenue, and then the other side is 50% donations. That 50% is then further split, where half of it, 25% of the operating budget, comes from the draw on the endowment. And then 25% of the total pie comes from individual contributions from donors, which it is a very broad donor pool, a lot of individuals, because there are many people who donate at lower levels to the symphony. In part because they care so deeply about the organization and want to do something that's above and beyond ticket sales, and in part because there are some wonderful benefits associated with donating. So, for example, a number of the donors at Tanglewood would donate so that they could have access to lawn passes or events that helped bring them closer to the music, or parking passes that allowed them to park a little bit closer to their favorite corner of the grounds.
You then went to the Atlanta Symphony. Full disclosure, that's where you and I met.
Yes, indeed. After 8 years at the Boston Symphony, and after I got my MBA, I decided it was time for a change, that there's something to be said for knowing one organization really, really well, and an organization that is as complex and as exciting as the Boston Symphony. But to grow in my career, I really wanted to see how other orchestras did this work, and how other orchestras worked in different parts of the country, that there was a lot to glean and learn from getting the variety of how to solve the challenges and embrace the opportunities of orchestras. So I went to Atlanta for 2 years, and I was there as part of a executive management fellowship. And so this is something that was always designed to be 2 years. There's a membership organization called the League of American Orchestras. They are based in New York, and they do a lot of advocacy work for the hundreds of orchestras and music organizations across the country in the United States. But what they also do is professional development and training. And so many years ago, the League had a program that was a fellowship where they would find emerging leaders who were mid-career and give them placements in different orchestras across the country to do exactly that, to kind of learn from different organizations and kind of pick up experiences and experiential learning along the way to ready them to become CEOs of orchestras. The CEO of the Atlanta Symphony, Jennifer Barlament, she was an alumni of that program. And the league they actually did away with the program. They shifted their programming to be a little bit different, but she wanted to replicate that fellowship option and do it specific to Atlanta, use the Atlanta Symphony as a learning laboratory for emerging leaders, and then also be able to bring in somebody who could do practicums in a lot of different departments to be able to help contribute to the organization in their own experience. And so that's what I did. It was 2 years of working directly with Jennifer and her team, And I did little practicums in different departments so that I could really understand how the Atlanta Symphony worked and how it was different from Boston and how it was unique. And I am just so grateful to Jennifer and to the whole team for embracing me in this role and kind of making it up as we went along in terms of the mentorship and the fellowship and the experiential learning piece of it. And I would say, without question, it readied me to be an executive director of an orchestra.
So how was Atlanta different than Boston?
One of the things that I really enjoyed about Atlanta is that they, like all orchestras, they seek to embrace their communities and reflect their communities in all of their wonderful diverse elements. And in Atlanta, of course, that it means embracing and engaging very meaningfully with the Black community, because that is just such a key part of what makes Atlanta Atlanta. And so some of the things that I was able to do while I was there was tap into some of those programs that are very uniquely Atlanta. A few examples include the Talent Development Program. And so this is a program for 25 middle and high school students who are all Black or Latine in their demographic identity. And it brings these students into the Atlanta Symphony and gives them lessons and training and free tickets and mentorship and master classes, and really helps to ready them for careers in the performing arts. And I have to say, working with those students and understanding the legacy that they have across the country and across the world as incredibly talented musicians, and how they are helping to move the needle in terms of increasing the racial representation of American musicians and American orchestras writ large, was so inspiring. And so seeing that program, which celebrated its 30th anniversary last year while I was with Atlanta, was super inspiring and really, I think, serves as a template and a playbook for many other orchestras that seek to be part of making sure that racial representation and increasing the share of Black and Latine musicians is an institutional mandate.
Well, I have to say, I've lived in various cities. I've never seen a facility used more than the Memorial Arts Building at the Woodruff Arts Center. I mean, it is a real community center that does try to engage all segments, not just for the symphony, but for art in general. And I find that really impressive.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was the other thing that was so unique about Atlanta, is that their hall and the Woodruff Art Center overall, it is this multi-purpose space. It is very flexible to present a lot of different types of art. And so even the diversity of genres that get presented is so exciting. And so you're just bringing in scores of new people. And that's kind of the message over and over again. It's just new of these audience members who maybe have never been before or come to the Woodruff Art Center or to the Atlanta Symphony Hall for a program that really resonates with them. Not just everything that you would expect from an orchestra, but there's things on top of that. And so not only does that represent an ability to present a lot of different types of performance and bring in a lot of different types of people in Atlanta, but it also represents a really resilient financial model, because ticket sales are, again, a big part of the Atlanta Symphony's financial model. And it's a huge piece of the reason that the orchestra has been running a surplus. It has been in financial balance for 10 years and counting. And there are very few American orchestras that can say that.
When did you interview for the position at Albany?
I guess it was early 2024, so maybe about six to 8 months ago, and it was a very rigorous process, which was exciting.
And how soon after you did your interview did you get an offer?
Oh my gosh, I don't recall. It was a multi-month process. I did come to Albany for interviews. There was a really excellent search committee. It was headed by a member of the board of directors here. And I just thought that the search committee asked all the right questions and really represented the full swath of the challenges and the possibilities of this orchestra. And so I felt like I had, through the search process, a really good understanding of what this opportunity would be, but then also what they were looking for, and whether or not I would be a good fit for the future.
I see that your budget is roughly like 2.8 million a year,
About 3 is where we hover.
but you tend to run a little deficit each year.
That has been the experience in a number of years, yes.
And how are you going to change that? It's kind of a wise,
Yes,
but you get my
no,
point.
I do. And it's something where one of the things I love about nonprofits is that there is a huge amount of transparency in the budget, that it's kind of baked into the model that anybody can really understand. And part of that is earning the support and trust of our donor community to make sure that their contributions, their really generous philanthropic support is being spent in a responsible way. And so when I look at the budget and the finances of this organization, I of course see that there needs to be a change in terms of how we make sure that we're being responsible. And it comes in kind of two prongs. The first is, the two main levers you have are expenses and revenues. And so you can decrease your expenses and increase your revenues to be able to get back to balance. On the expense side, one of the things that's really exciting to me is that the vast majority of our expenses, on average over the last 10 years, it's been 59%, and that held true last year as well, goes towards our artistic programming. So it is going directly to the core of our mission. And so it's really showing to me, and that when you really dig into the expenses, is we are as lean as we possibly can be on the admin and on the overhead side of things, and that any money that we do spend is going directly to our mission producing programming, to our musicians, to our visiting artists, to our composers, and then to our educational programming as well. And that is something that absolutely has to be part of the future, is that we maintain that balance, or even tip it a little bit further in terms of making sure that all of our expenses are being responsibly used to produce our mission. And then it's on the revenue side of things. And one of the things I mentioned about the Boston Symphony and the Atlanta Symphony that was part of what made their models a little bit more successful is that it is about broadening the base. And that is what is exciting to me about the Albany Symphony, is that for us, we have an amazing core of donors who have been giving ardently over the years. And we want to recognize and celebrate that support and make sure that it is the foundation of what we do. Same with our subscriber base. We have 1,000 subscriber households, which is actually kind of unheard of. It's a really, really healthy group of people that are investing in what we're doing by buying tickets, not just one concert where they're like, I'm really excited about that program, but they're saying, no, I trust you and I want to show up for whatever you're interested in. It's celebrating that as a bedrock from where we can grow, so that now when we focus on new donors, new corporations, new single ticket buyers, that it is people that have never been involved with us before, because that's what represents the stability that I think is going to be a key part of our future, is being able to grow the revenue pie to meet our expenses and to meet our artistic ambition. And in Albany, we absolutely have the potential and ability to do that. If you take the full catchment area of this region, it's almost 1 million people. And we do perform not just in downtown Albany, but we perform in Troy and Schenectady, and we do run-out concerts and pop-ups that are all along the Erie canals that extend all the way west across New York. And so the fact that we're engaging with so many people means that there is an opportunity to bring those people closer to us, including as financial supporters in investing in our mission.
You're per session orchestra?
Per service.
Yeah, per service.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Explain what that means.
Certainly. So with some orchestras, their arrangement with the American Federation of Musicians, which is a union group of musicians across the country, is in a salary model where they guarantee employment of their musicians for a certain number of weeks per year. Now, that is not the case for the Albany Symphony and of many orchestras of our budget size, where we are per service, which means that we guarantee income every time we bring our musicians together in a rehearsal, in a concert, in chamber, in education. And so we negotiate with the local chapter of our union on what that rate is, and then also other stipulations around that to ensure that it is income that makes it a worthwhile service for our musicians to say yes to, by providing housing and travel and per diem to make sure that they, if they are coming from outside of the capital region, that it is a lucrative gig for them. But what it means is that some of our musicians are local, some come from further away to come and play with the Albany Symphony, and I'm always inspired by how far they come and how they say yes to being asked to being able to play with this orchestra, because it is part of their overall portfolio of music that they do, that we don't have enough work for them to make it their full-time gig. And so it often means that they are playing with other orchestras in the region or across the country. Many of them play on Broadway or in New York. Many of them have teaching portfolios and studios of students at universities and high schools and other conservatories in the area. And it's just we get to be one patchwork of their overall performance and musical portfolio, which is exciting.
Is it difficult to maintain a roster in that kind of system? In other words, consistency from concert to concert and season to season?
Yeah, good question. So we do have a full number of contract players in terms of they could comprise an entire orchestra. In our agreement, we do ask that our musicians commit to at least half of our services in the year. And then we kind of put that together at the beginning of the year. But that does necessarily mean that we always have some substitutes who are playing with the orchestra. That's kind of guaranteed in any orchestra model, but particularly for the per service model as well. What's exciting to us about that is that we have a really deep, impressive roster of subs who come in and play with us. And so it allows us to not just have an orchestra sound that is kind of one sound, that this is all the players who come together and this is what they can do, but it provides kind of even more depth and breadth of what they can do. And it means that when they do come together for subscription weeks, like what happened last week with our opening night, that orchestra that is coming together for the first rehearsal, they probably have never played together in that exact configuration before. And so it represents a challenge that is really embraced by our music director, David Allen Miller, and by our musicians. And it was astounding to see how quickly that they were able to come together in a singular voice and master the music together.
One final thing. I know Albany is known for supporting contemporary composers. And of course, you have a nice string of Grammy nominations and wins also. Have you found in your experience that when contemporary music is programmed, attendance falls off?
No, actually not here, which is real. That was one of the most exciting reasons that I wanted to take this job, is that I think the Albany Symphony has done a marvelous job of earning the trust of this community and saying that as an orchestra, we have a responsibility, yes, to be able to celebrate and perform some of the greatest pieces and the greatest composers of all time when it comes to orchestral music, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that we are an orchestra of the future, and that living composers, living artists are part of reshaping the narrative going forward. And so with every concert, we have at least one new work, and we present a number of world premieres that we specifically commission every single year as part of that mission. And we have really earned the audience's trust that they, they're taking a chance. They may not love it in terms of the piece that is coming through, but I think there was a really great example last year that happened before my time. There was a concert that was kind of finishing out a 3-year look with a new young composer named Viet Quang. And he had done this beautiful new commission for the Albany Symphony. And the entire audience was up in arms and how excited they were about him, and having seen his career and his art kind of grow over a number of years, and new pieces that he brought to the symphony and that he brought to Albany and that we got to bring to life. We got to record, we got to make sure that it is going to be part of the legacy of future classical music and future orchestral music. And then the concert finished with Beethoven Symphony Number 4, and the reviewers and the audiences and everyone said, wow, that Beethoven was a real letdown in comparison to Viet Quang's piece. And it wasn't that it was performed, without, gusto and impressiveness. It was just that by comparison, this audience was more enthusiastic about the new music than they were about Beethoven. And I mean, that's not to say, of course, Beethoven's still going to be part of what we perform, and it's part of the inspiration of many of our living composers. And but it just goes to show that this audience in this region is part of making sure that the future of classical music is alive. I mean, one of the things that most excites me about American orchestras is that when they have a point of view and when they have kind of a clear place that they're going and how they're bringing people along in that journey. And so sometimes that is about, doing a cycle of a certain composer, or it is kind of really going deep and exploring a certain era in orchestral music. And other times it is about, doing a focus and a priority on new music. And sometimes it's a blend there. But I think what's so energizing to me is at the Albany Symphony is that it does have that point of view, and it's really good at articulating it. One of our taglines is listen adventurously. And I think that's just such a wonderful way to invite people into what we're doing, that we're not presenting something that's static. We're presenting something that we want to share, and that we want to be part of using music to bring people together and to tell really interesting stories.
Excellent. All right. In the few minutes we have remaining, is there something that you would particularly like to comment on?
I mean, thank you very much for this opportunity. One of the things we keep saying at the Albany Symphony is that we're looking towards our centennial. So this is an orchestra that's turning 100 years old in the year 2030. And so that's one of the things that was so exciting to me as well, is to be able to help being part of bringing this community together and expanding this community to really celebrate its centennial, to take a look at all of the commissions and recordings and stories that we've told, and really cool, innovative projects that we've done, the educational impact that we've had during that 100-year period, but then use that to launch us into our second century. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to be able to make sure that this orchestra is looking to the future, as it has been for so many of its years. Thank you for calling from Atlanta. It's a part of the world that I care very deeply about, and I feel so lucky to have worked there for 2 years at the Atlanta Symphony.
Best of luck. And maybe we can, 2 years down the road, when it gets closer to your centennial, we can talk again and see how it's gone.
Certainly. Yes.
All right.
Well, I thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. Wasn't Emily just amazing? Thoughtful, smart, and so articulate, the Albany Symphony is clearly in wonderful hands with her at the helm. It's truly inspiring to see someone so dedicated to crafting a meaningful career while following her dream. And of course, a big thanks to William for his talent in creating a space where we get to dive deeply into each guest's story. His interviews are all about the guests, and it shows. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give us a like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support makes a huge difference, helping us reach more music lovers like you and share our top-tier interviews, reviews, and behind-the-scenes tours with an even wider audience. A special shout out to our incredible patrons, Robert Burns, Andres Cardenas, Deborah Kay, and James Ginsberg. If you'd like to join this wonderful group and support our channel, visit us at www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic. Thanks so much for watching. We can't wait to bring you more fascinating explorations of the world of classical music. See you soon.